What's up, headliners? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. We got to get into the nitty gritty, baby. We got to get our tight ends ready for week 15. We need to do some squats. We need to squeeze really tight and then let it loose. You know, whatever you do. Wait, no, sorry, never mind. Wrong tight ends. We're talking about the football kind. Anyway, we still got to get those ready for week 15, right? We got fantasy football championships to win. Let's roll it back, take a look at week 14 first. Looking at the numbers from week 14, 77% on tight ends last week. Really good week. Irv Smith Jr., Jared Cook. Cook, a guy who hadn't been doing anything as of recently. Irv Smith Jr. coming back from injury, but Kyle Rudolph ended up being out. So I ended up missing on those two, but hit on plenty of others. 77%. Good percentage for the week. Let's see if we can get over 80% though. And let's jump into Thursday Night Football and take a look at that matchup first. There might not be a better tight end matchup than the Chargers and the Raiders this week on Thursday night, because we've got two top tight ends for you to play this week. For Hunter Henry, the volume's still there. He's got 80 targets this season, which is fifth among tight ends. And like I've been telling you, for tight ends, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. If he's getting the volume, you continue to play him. And Darren Waller, you just play him. Put him in your lineup. If you got Darren Waller, you slot him into tight end. You hit submit, figure out the rest later. For Buffalo and Denver, not a whole lot to say about Buffalo. Dawson Knox has actually been the tight end 12 the last 3 weeks. So it's still not quite enough for me, though, to put him in the lineup against Denver. It's going to depend on Noah Fant. That's the big thing that I'm looking at this week. Will he be ready to go? Some said he left last week with an injury, and then it came out that he left last week while he was sick. If he starts, he plays. Buffalo allows the third most yards to tight end this season. Noah Fant in a position to really put up some decent numbers this week. Carolina and Green Bay, who cares about Ian Thomas? We're tossing that one out the window. The thing is Robert Tonyan. We're going to continue to start him. The dude, he's been absolutely fantastic. And I really talked about it a lot more in depth in my start sit video last week, why he's been so good. So if you missed it last week, basically the gist of the point is all the weapons are healthy. They're pulling defenders all over the place. Robert Tonyan is a really good mismatch on the inside, and he's winning all of those matchups right now. Continue to play him. He's putting up terrific numbers. For San Francisco and Dallas, y'all have been waiting for it. George Kittle might be on the way back here pretty soon. Okay, not necessarily coming back this week, but he may be back for some of you that play in week 16 fantasy matchups, or maybe for some of you that even play in week 17. Number one, change that. Never play a fantasy football championship in week 17. But for those of you that do, Kittle's close to being back. And this would be perfect timing for those of you that own him and have been dealing with a lot of issues at tight end. Now, for the other tight ends, not interested in starting them. On the Dallas side of things, Dalton Schultz is still right around 6 to 8 fantasy points per game. But remember, for me to call you a start here, I got to get you to 10. You got to get 10 for me to be a start. He's just not coming that close to 10, and the upside for him to hit 10, just not there on a weekly basis right now. Hey, for Seattle, great to see the Will Dissly touchdown. I would have taken that a couple of weeks ago when I had a little bit of money on it, plus 450. But you know what? I'm not bitter. I'm not sitting Will Dissly this week because I'm bitter about him not scoring a couple of weeks ago. I'm just sitting him because, honestly, there's just not enough upside there for me right now. Hollister's still seeing a little bit of play, too, at this point. I'm rooting for Will Dissly. I'm just not banking on it. And for Washington, keep running Logan Thomas out there. He's the tight end 5 since week 6. And with Alex Smith at the helm, he's been very, very steady. The dude's a top 10 option every single week right now. A lot of people talking about Cole Kmet right now, and rightfully so. He's looked a lot better the last couple of weeks, and I do love the usage last week. I love that he's getting more volume than what Jimmy Graham is right now. But Graham's still getting snaps, he's still getting targets, and he's still getting looks in the red zone. And when you have two tight ends that are basically split on playing time, it makes it really hard to call either one on a weekly basis. A little too much risk for me here in the playoffs. Let's focus our attention over to the other side, though, with Minnesota, because this matchup is going to include my Manscaped must start for the week, and that's going to be Irv Smith Jr. this week if Kyle Rudolph is out again. That's going to be the key component here. If there's no Kyle Rudolph, we're going with Irv Smith Jr. this week. Tyler Conklin last week, second on the team in receiving yards. I don't expect nearly that much this week, but I do expect a lot of Irv Smith Jr., and he's my Manscaped must start because the Bears are allowing the third most fantasy points to tight ends this season. And with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, they're going to have tough matchups on the outside. It's going to be a prime opportunity for Irv Smith Jr. to smash over the middle of the field. Don't forget, head over to manscaped.com. Use the promo code Headliners, all capital letters, and you're going to get 20% off any of their great products, plus free shipping. If there's somebody special out there that needs a little bit of, self-care, you can help them out at manscaped.com. Headliners, all capital letters, 20% off, and free shipping. Well, there's no one to talk about from New England, but I was excited to talk about Mike Gesicki this week and that big performance last week, but another tight end down. Another one bites dust. Okay, no, we won't go that far. No more singing, ladies and gentlemen. Durham Smythe, Adam Shaheen. I'm expecting basically an even split. And as I mentioned on the waiver wire video, Smythe is probably going to see some more targets, some more volume, and Shaheen's going to be like your red zone guy. But we're in the middle of the fantasy playoffs, and do you want to say you lost your week because you played Durham Smythe or Adam Shaheen at tight end? For Jacksonville and Baltimore, let's face it, only one person to talk about here at this video, and it's Mark Andrews. Not great last week, but I think we've come to expect too much from Mark Andrews at times. I'm still got him listed as a start this week. 5 receptions, 78 yards is nothing to scoff at. Absolutely love seeing it last week. Hopefully the volume continues to be there. Marquise Brown playing a lot better really helps Mark Andrews, and I'll bank on another start performance from him here in week 15. For Tampa Bay, Rob Gronkowski's really dropped to that number 3 threat in that offense right now. And I don't really mind it. Yeah, he's going to be a little bit lower in the rankings because of it. Yeah, we're really going to be banking on either a touchdown or a lot of targets. But, being the number 3 to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans with Tom Brady as your quarterback isn't the worst thing in the world. And for Atlanta, Hayden Hurst has less than 10 receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games. I think you know pretty well what we're doing with him this week. It doesn't include him being in your lineup. Detroit and Tennessee, yeah, TJ Hawkinson's going to be a start for me this week. I'm worried about Chase Daniels being the quarterback. I really hope he's not. But it's going to depend on Matthew Stafford. And as of this recording, I don't know what that looks like as of yet. I'm not going to start any of the wide receivers in this matchup for Detroit, but TJ Hawkinson has been far too consistent. And it's not like it's a bad matchup for him anyway. Chase Daniel probably leans on him quite a bit in this matchup, if that's who ends up playing. For Tennessee, we've got 3 tight ends playing for Tennessee right now, and this is the same type of mess that we see with Indianapolis on a weekly basis, who will be coming up next year. You've got Jonnu Smith, Anthony Firkser, Jeff Swaim, all of them getting snaps, all of them getting targets, all of them getting receptions, none of them being fantasy viable. Jordan Akins, I tell you what, man, I'm gonna need you to go get those eyes checked. Okay, call Jameis Winston, find out who his eye doctor is, and go see him, because that was one heck of a drop in the end zone last week. I wouldn't even say drop, it hit you in the arm. I'm not sure what it was. Don't worry, though. I'm not going to start you this week, so no pressure. For Indianapolis, no one to start here either. It's the same thing every single week. It changes every week. 3 weeks ago, it was Jack Doyle. Then it was Trey Burton. Then it was Mo Alley-Cox. And it was back to Jack Doyle. So if anything tells us, it's probably back to Trey Burton this week. But they switch every single week on who's getting the receptions and the most volume. I got a little bit of surprise of you this week. No, the surprise is not Dallas Goedert. He's still going to be a start for me this week. And the ceiling is lower with Zach Ertz back, but the floor has been very, very safe with Zach Ertz back as well, because Ertz only has 7 targets since coming back. Start Goedert, sitting Ertz. I listed Dan Arnold as a start this week. I know, Headliner Nation, I've let you down. But you know me. I'll stick with my players, okay? I'll also, if I don't like a player, I'll go against that player until they've shown me something. I'm also not going to hold out a player on a really good potential matchup just because I don't think that they've been a thing all season long, which Dan Arnold, trust me, hasn't been a thing all season long. 1 startable week up to this point. But maybe Dan Arnold is my Ben Watson of 2020. And for those of you, the OGs from the channel last year, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to make that mistake again. Dan Arnold's not going to be nearly that high in my rankings. He's all right for 1 week. Philadelphia has allowed 8 touchdowns to tight ends this year. They're about top 10 in terms of fantasy points against tight ends. And Dan Arnold has 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games. So you know what? We'll give Dan Arnold a shot. If you've got someone better, you definitely go with it. If you've got absolutely nothing, why not? I'll be honest with you, I don't know why I even mention the New York Jets every single week because they're no good. Their tight ends are no good. Chris Herndon, he's actually pretty good, but it's the Jets, right? For Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett, 5 combined targets last week. Yeah, Higbee saw some receiving yards, but it's the same thing on a weekly basis. You've got Cooper Kupp, you've got Robert Woods. They're running the football well right now. Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett, they're splitting targets, splitting touches, splitting snaps, all that good stuff. It just hasn't been there for them, and it's still not there in week 15. You know the drill. If you got Travis Kelce, you start Travis Kelce. Nothing to say there. But with Jared Cook, he does have a touchdown in back-to-back games. So I'll say he's a start this week. And, I'll give him a start in a potential shootout. Touchdown upside is still there. Just keep in mind, for him to be a start, he has to have at least 10 fantasy points in half PPR formats. He has just hit those last 2 weeks with that touchdown. A touchdown is worth 6 points. That's telling you how little he's getting in terms of volume. Touchdown is upside there in this matchup, though. I'll roll with it. Harrison Bryant got 6 targets last week, just didn't turn him into anything, unfortunately. And David Njoku saw some big plays as well. Both of those guys were working in tandem with Austin Hooper out, but even though they worked well on the football field, doesn't necessarily mean they'll work well in our lineups, and neither of them do this week. But for the Giants, we're going to go back to Evan Ingram. The targets continue to be there. He's really the only decent passing option right now. They're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. And again, like I've said many times so far this season, KISS. We're keeping it simple. If a tight end's getting targets, we will utilize them. Unfortunately, with the emergence of James Washington all of a sudden the last couple of weeks, Eric Ebron is not looking like the best option anymore, but we're going to list him as a start. Didn't look great last week, not a ton of targets. Hopefully we'll get it this week against Cincinnati, but this is one of those prime fantasy matchups where Cincinnati does give up a lot of fantasy points to tight ends, but what if all the volume goes to the wide receivers to start and then they just run the football? It's a possibility going up against Cincinnati. And for Cincinnati, I did have Drew Sample as a start last week. Didn't end up working out. I've been keeping an eye on it. I really wanted to list him as a start with the backup quarterbacks coming in with Joe Burrow's injury a few weeks back, but it just never came to fruition, unfortunately. There you have it, Headliner Nation, all set for Week 15 in your tight ends. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below if you appreciate the content. If you got a question about somebody I didn't answer, feel free to ask it in the comments. And then if you're new to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.